Wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. And boy, have we got a feisty show for you today. We're going to start off talking about inheritance tax. Is it time for it to be scrapped? So many people say it is unfair. It is a tax on a tax. You die and the state grabs your money. Is it time for it to go?
Or should it be a priority? That's
another thing. If you're looking at all taxes, should inheritance tax be a priority or income tax?
Polls show that immigration is moving up the list of concerns of voters. It's at its highest level since 2017 and has doubled in the last year in terms of the voters' concerns. So what should the government do to assuage those concerns? Is the concern all about the level of immigration? Is it because of the language that's being used to talk about immigration? Well, we'll be discussing all of that with former Brexit MEP Ben Habib.
And there's been a rise in the number of prison officers having affairs with prison inmates. So is it because, and it's particularly with the women prison officers, is it because they're attracted to bad boys, or is this about manipulation, coercion and blackmail? And where does it all end?
And of course, it's a big weekend for sport, big weekend in the Premier League. The most eye-catching fixture, for your benefit, Esther, is Tottenham against Liverpool.
The Liverpool bit. The Liverpool bit's my benefit.
So who better to speak to than former Tottenham manager Harry Redknapp, who started his managerial career at Tottenham with a win over Liverpool. So we'll be speaking to him about that later.
Could be a bad omen for me then.
I hope so. And of course, your views are important to us too, so please get in touch, join in with the conversation, email us at gbviews@gbnews.com with whatever you want to talk about today too. But before we get into all of that, here's the news headlines with the very wonderful Tamsin.
Lovely intro. Thanks very much, Phil, and good morning to you from the GB newsroom. It's 2 minutes past 10. Dozens of Conservative MPs have signed a pledge to never again vote for an increase in overall taxes. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss and former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith are among those to have signed up, along with 7 former cabinet ministers. The promise means they won't vote for the Chancellor's autumn statement if it contains tax rises, putting pressure on Rishi Sunak ahead of the Conservative Party conference. Jeremy Hunt has told The Times he wants to stop the vicious circle of ever-rising taxes, but ruled out tax cuts in the short term. Former party chairman Sir Jake Berry, who has organised the pledge, says it holds the Chancellor to his word.
All too often, we have seen these promises and pledges made by MPs across the political divide that haven't materialised. That is why this tax pledge is different. It isn't connected to the Conservative Party. It is a direct pledge from me and my constituents in Rosendale and Darwen and to the British people that I will not vote to put taxes up. It's for keeps. It is a pledge that I will stick to as long as I am a Member of Parliament.
The Prime Minister says he's slamming the brakes on the war on motorists. Rishi Sunak, who's expected to address the issue this week, told The Sun that harebrained schemes like low-traffic neighbourhoods and 20-mile-per-hour zones were being forced on drivers. The Department for Transport says guidance will be reviewed to prevent their blanket use in England. Local councils in England also face a clampdown on using traffic offences to boost their budgets. The driver of a school bus who died after it crashed on the M53 yesterday has been named online by his family. Stephen Shrimpton's family says the father of 2 suffered medical issues at the wheel of the coach. 15-year-old Jessica Baker also died in the crash. 4 other children were taken to hospital, including a 14-year-old boy whose injuries are said to be life-changing. The pupils were on their way to Calday Grange and West Kirby Grammar Schools on the Wirral when their bus overturned after colliding with a car. Rail passengers are again facing travel chaos, with train drivers going on strike today. ASLEF members at 16 operators in England have walked out in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Many parts of the country will have no services, and those that do run will start later and finish earlier than usual. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says the current offer on the table is reasonable.
The strike that's taking place today, it's clearly a political strike, timed to coincide with the Conservative Party conference. You don't have to think very carefully to see that's the case. But look, there's a fair offer on the table. Train drivers get paid an average salary of £60,000 for a full-day, 35-hour week. The pay rise that's on the table that they won't put to their members would take that average salary to £65,000 a year. Now, look, I think most of your viewers will look at that and think that is actually quite fair and reasonable.
Well, ASLEF's General Secretary Mick Whelan accused the Transport Secretary of not negotiating.
Well, it's not political, it's industrial. Mr Harper and his cronies for the last 16 months have been accusing us of attacking all sorts of events on strike days, which we haven't done. Because we haven't seen Mr Harper, we decided to make a point today. Where's Wally? Where's Mark? Come and see us. We are striking today to get the attention of the Tory party and the government to resolve this dispute.
2 people have been injured after a crash involving the Flying Scotsman. The train was involved in a slow-speed collision with another heritage train just hours before visitors were due to board it at Aviemore Station. The National Railway Museum says a shunting incident happened whilst the steam train was being coupled with the Royal Scotsman train carriages. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now, though, it's back to Esther and Phil.
Thanks, Tamsin. Now, welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. And like I said, it's going to be a feisty show today.
Well, it's time now for a look at the biggest stories of the day with broadcaster and journalist Michael Crick and radio presenter Mike Parry. Where shall we start? Mike, do you want to open the batting?
Well, yes, I will. Let's move on in the news agenda. We've covered lots of big stories on the station this morning, but I've got a headline here: why kids grow up unruly if dad isn't home for dinner. Now, it's a great report, this. It's done in America, but it says that as young as 5 or 6 years of age, if children are aware that their father's not at the dinner table, it can affect their behaviour. They become more unruly, and that can stick with them for life. So, but the other side to this report, fascinating report, is that some fathers don't appear at the dinner table if they don't feel they've been doing it right for their families. You see what I mean? If they haven't earned enough money, if they don't have enough self-respect in their job, they tend to avoid the dinner table because they don't feel comfortable in front of their children. Their children, they think, judge them.
But they are, as people might see, the head of the family.
Yeah.
It's a time to get together, to
Yeah.
talk about things. So that discipline, they're saying, happens around the family table. Do you think it's important to have that time together for a family, to get the family together?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think a lot of this report is a statement of the obvious, frankly.
But
I mean,
people
I think
have forgotten that, though, haven't they?
the more that parents are around, and the more that both parents are around, if there are 2 parents and they can both be around, the better. Be it at the dinner table or be it at the weekends or whatever. And if a child is brought up by a single parent, and it's generally a mother, and the mother is having to go out to work to make a living for the family and is not at home a lot and they're being looked after by other people, that is obviously detrimental, I think, to them and to inculcating values and discipline. And so it's it's one of these reports that doesn't, I don't think, tell us much.
Well, yes.
But the point, the second point, though,
Yeah.
Mike, which is very interesting, about how men who have not been earning, are unemployed or not earning money, avoid the dinner table.
That's right, and do it.
But I just say, Mark, I should declare an interest here. I mean, because I've got 2 kids. My second son was born 2 weeks after I got elected to Parliament. So
right.
I was never around.
No.
To be perfectly honest, throughout any of his growing up.
Yeah, but did you not put time aside once a week to say the family eat together? That's what my dad used to do. You say Sunday lunch, we're all getting together.
Well, I was always... Well, the thing is, when you're an MP, even when you're at home, You're not always at home.
No, but-
Yeah.
And I think the children and members of Parliament suffer a lot, and indeed there are there are some tragic cases of children and members of Parliament who've ended up committing suicide.
You don't think reports like this in any way stigmatise single parents?
Well, I don't think they stigmatise single parents, but Michael raised the issue that I was going to get onto, that I'm much more concerned about sort of 12, 13, 14-year-old children not having their father at the dinner table, because that's when they start to develop what I would call antisocial attitudes to life, and that's when you need the presence of a father around, because single-parent families where mother is the only adult, we've seen it time and time again in studies, children tend to go more off the rails if there's only one person of influence in that house. And wasn't there a report last week also which said that the absence of male teachers now in junior schools means the children are getting a different view of how to discipline themselves?
I also think it's got to be time where you are together, because I've seen people having dinner time together and everybody's on a mobile phone. There was no point.
Well, they shouldn't be allowed.
That's why I say it's about discipline. It's about the conversation. It's not been on a phone.
We ban mobile phones at our table, but that's,
I like it.
That's a small, and I'm always breaking the rule, I'm afraid. But that's a small. But the interesting thing is, what do we do to improve this situation? What do we do to help families stick together?
Well, don't we incentivise them with tax breaks, and don't we try and encourage more general
stick together?
Yes, of course it does. Yes,
family together?
Yes, of course it would, because yes, it would be an indication of society of the way we can improve behaviour, the way we can improve the coming together of society is not to let families break up.
We can't stand each other anymore, but I'll tell you what, because we're getting a tax break, we'll stick together.
No, well, they shouldn't have got married in the first
You end up with rowing parents, and that is not going to have a very...
Can I bring in Elon Musk here, his father? Now, this is somebody, right, a rather unusual relationship with his father. There's just a little quote I'm going to go from. He did have dinner with his son, but he said, I'd pick him up from the office. He'd be in his school uniform. All of his friends were free-thinking, free this, that, the other, extreme libertarians. And after a meal, he said, sometimes he did feel uncomfortable because they'd all throw it out at each other and say, get your clothes off. So this was most unusual upbringing. Is that why Elon Musk went off the rails in some way? What a strange...
It's amusing, isn't it, by the way? We've been having this conversation. We're all Northerners and we keep talking about the dinner table. And yet, really, we mean the tea table, don't we?
Anyway, Michael, what story do you want to have a bash at?
Well, I thought one of the interesting stories of the week was actually James Cracknell being chosen as a Conservative candidate. You know, the Olympic oarsman who won gold medals in 2000 and 2004, I think. He's been chosen as your party's candidate for Colchester. But the bad news for both of you is that James Cracknell is a big Remainer. In fact, he said that he would like to see us in a generation's time go back into the EU. Now, the interesting thing is here, because I study all of this, that actually quite a lot of Remainers are being chosen as Conservative candidates. And I wonder, I mean, obviously you'll try and deny this, but I wonder whether the centre of gravity in the Conservative Party is moving back to the centre ground, and that it's...
Why there was an assumption... Why is it being a Remainer a centre-ground opinion?
Well, because centrists like me and people on the left...
Lefties like you mean?
Well, I don't think a lot of my friends would call me a lefty. but I'm making a serious point here.
I think the point, and I can see where you're going. I think, look, Brexit is done. We are a global nation and we've got to be getting our trade deals everywhere else. But what you do have is relationships with your nearest countries as well. So you'll be getting free trade agreements. So there is we move on. We've had Brexit. Yeah, but there is no going back. There is no, like Keir Starmer, let's go back into the EU through a backdoor, pay more. No.
But Michael's made a very good point about the party. Why do you keep bringing in more Remainers? Because
because that's what the party members have voted for.
No. It's all very well to say Brexit's done and all that, but we know that the more Remainers you have in the party, the more trouble they're going to make in trying to implement what should have been Brexit, which was never implemented. And they'll continue. They'll continue. No. I'm talking to the, on the ground, the Tories on the ground who select their candidates. I don't know why they'd select a Remainer. I think they're mad, because it's just another stumbling block.
Maybe they felt in this case, because he's a star, he's gold dust and stardust. He's somebody that the public some of the public will have heard of. That would help them get elected.
I've never seen a rowing boat go through the House of Commons, so...
Maybe they're not interested in fighting the last war, they're interested in fighting the next ones, and aren't political parties supposed to be broad churches?
They are indeed, but I just think it's an interesting development. You know, there's this assumption everywhere the Conservative Party is moving to the right, given what Suella Braverman's been saying this week and so on, indeed, even the Prime Minister, and yet it's a more complicated picture than that.
And
that's
as
what
you
I'm
said,
saying.
maybe it was more to do with him and the other things he'd achieved than it was about Remain. Then
Well said,
but he got chosen pretty overwhelmingly.
Who's moved a bit more to the right with the Conservative Party? Esther, you wanted to talk?
Oh, yes, I want to talk about this man because I thought he actually now is a stand-up comedian. Some of you might say he's always been a stand-up comedian, and that is Trump. If we can show this video footage of Trump here as he was giving a discussion to his crowds, a rallying call, if we can just see this video clip.
About Joe Biden.
Interesting, but let's see. Look, some people say Biden's going to make it. Does anybody think he's going to make it to the starting gate? I mean, the guy can't find his way off of a stage. Look, here's a stage. Here's a stage. I've never seen this stupid stage before, right? I've never seen it. But if I walk left, there's a stair. And if I walk right, there's a stair. And this guy gets up. Where am I?
Yeah, I mean,
that's very funny.
It is very.
I mean, it was funny.
It is very funny, and it's a very good imitation.
Do you think it's effective?
And I think it is effective because you do say, he's got him perfectly, and the Democrats. I'm afraid. I think Biden's got a good record as president, but they're going to have to get rid of him because he's become a joke figure. Although I regard Trump as a joke figure as well, and I think actually it will be a good thing. Goodness knows who the Democrats will choose. But the Democrats have a habit of choosing people at the last minute, Carter and Obama and Clinton, who then go on to be president. I'm sure they will find somebody, probably one of the governors, and I think that somebody can beat Trump. I think at the moment Biden can't beat Trump, and I think that is very, very worrying for the world.
Maybe Trump's making a mistake here by going after Biden because he wants Biden.
He's going to end up shooting his fox if he's not careful.
One thing I liked here, Mike.
You are a devious man, Phil.
Don't I know? One thing I liked here, Mike, was the fact that the comedy was used to devastating effect.
Yes, it
Whereas
was.
sometimes in British politics, we'll actually see them playing the man, not the ball, and just negative, degrading.
That's right.
This was comedy.
I thought it was brilliant, honestly, as you quite rightly say. Do you remember in his last campaign, he got himself into trouble? I'm talking about Trump, because he tried to imitate. On one occasion, he was accused of trying to imitate a disabled reporter. Do you remember? And that had a bit of nastiness to it, and people didn't like that. But that's almost as though he's had some training in how to deliver the punchline. You know what I mean? I thought it was brilliant, honestly.
It's interesting. This week, Peter Kellner, the pollster, said that he'd asked his Labour friends, a lot of them, which they would prefer. The option that the two incumbents win, in other words, Biden and Sunak.
Biden and...
the two incumbents. Because these two elections next year could be very close, around about October next year, November next year. Or that the two insurgents win, in other words, Starmer and Trump. And he said that only one of his left-wing friends wanted Trump and Starmer to win. That actually, in other words, they regarded it as more important that Trump doesn't become American president than it is to them important that Sunak doesn't become Prime Minister again. And I think he's right. I think that the election of the President of the United States, for once, it's always exaggerated, but I think on this occasion, it's more important to all of our futures than the election of the Prime Minister.
Have you got a quick funny story?
Just a quick one. I always like to bring in one of these things. Sun, page 22 today. Great sex, get into bed early. Apparently, the key to great sex is a good night's sleep. Scientists found men who struggle with insomnia were 58% more likely to suffer erectile dysfunction. So there you go. Apparently, if you want good sex, get yourself
So,
to
Esther,
bed.
you're going to be putting Phil to bed early?
But it sounds
Drag me to bed early, Mike.
It sounds to me as if you're putting them to bed early to get a good night's sleep.
Yes.
So, yes, I will be.
Yeah, but I mean, when do you get time for the sex in that case?
He's always trying to
in the
drag me
morning
to
or what?
I'm staying up late. But
I'm happy.
Mr. Crick, Mr. Crick.
I'm happy to announce exclusively on this show that as I gave it up about 15 years ago, it doesn't matter to me.
what, sleep or sex?
Sex.
There you go. It's a world first on GB News.
An eye-opener here, isn't it? Certainly is an eye-opener here.
Anyway, Michael, thank you very much. We'll see you in the next hour.
We'll get Crick later about does he
what?
go to bed early? Did you go to bed? Are you an early
No.
bed?
No, I
Late.
sit up reading.
Late.
Well, there you go.
Late to
You're
bed.
learning a lesson here.
Yes.
Anyway, coming up, a new poll shows concern for immigration is at its highest for 6 years. Will the problem ever be solved, and could it decide the next election?
Plus, we've got some expert football analysis from Premier League legend Harry Redknapp. Plus, so much more. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time now is 10:23. You've got Esther and Phil here on Saturday Morning Live.
Now, there's a big football game coming up today, Spurs versus Liverpool in the Premier League, and who better to discuss that with than legendary Premier League football manager and friend of the show, Harry Redknapp. Harry, thanks for joining us this morning. Before we get on to Spurs against Liverpool, and I know you've got happy memories of starting out your Tottenham career there, I wanted to go back to earlier in the week, Harry, because I was watching Sheffield United get annihilated by Newcastle 8-0. It was absolutely embarrassing to watch them. Lord knows what the manager thought or the players thought. It was embarrassing just to watch it as a neutral observer. And I was doing my research, and lo and behold, I found out, Harry, that in your very first game as manager, you lost 9-0 to Lincoln City. So, who better to... How do you feel when you're a manager, when your side's getting completely dismantled like that?
Well, as you say, it was my first game, and what happened, David Webb, the manager, had left the day before. Webby was great, and David had gone, and I had to take the team. And we got to Lincoln. Every game in the country was called off nearly that day. The pitches were frozen and snow, but they were top of the league, and they had beautiful little pimpled boots that had just come on the market, and we only had long nylon studs. And my players were falling over when they were going on the pitch for warm-up. And we were 9-0 down with over 20 minutes to go. I thought, this is going to be 16. But listen, we survived.
So what do you say to your players after a hammering like that? What do you say to them?
Well, I said to the press, I think their 8th goal could have been offside. No, what do you say to them? You can't say what you'd like to say because you're going to need them again next week. You know, you've got to say, listen, lads, put that out the way, but really, you're not. You know, you really want to tell them the truth.
Now let's get on to Tottenham against Liverpool today, because that looks like the big. Oh, he's gone.
Oh.
He's gone.
Do you know why? Because he didn't want to offend me, did he? He knew that, he might have said Liverpool wasn't going to win, whereas I was hoping Liverpool was going to win. So maybe he thought it was better to go rather than to cause some sort of matrimonial argument between the pair of us.
I think it was because after his success on the St Leger a couple of weeks ago,
he's racing off, getting down to get better.
It's the Arc de Triomphe tomorrow, and I was trying to I was going to ask him what was going to win. He
didn't want to give any more tips.
He wanted to protect... Harry, I think Harry might be back with us, actually.
Oh, he's back in.
You're all right. So let's get on to Tottenham and Liverpool. Your first game...
I'm in my car. I'm actually sitting in the passenger seat of my car here. The car's parked. I'm going to be footballed out by the end of the day. I'm watching one of my grandsons play under-15 football here at Hamworthy for Hamworthy against Wimble. I go straight from here to watch my other grandson play for Bournemouth under-18s. Bournemouth Football Club against Cardiff, and from there I go straight to Bournemouth to watch Arsenal play.
You couldn't leave one of your grandkids out there, but the big football game today, obviously, Liverpool-Spurs.
Your first game in charge of Tottenham was beating Liverpool, I think, Harry. So what do you think is going to happen today?
Well, I think both teams are in good form. Both teams look good. Tottenham have been fantastic this year so far. Maddison was an amazing signing. And I like the look of Liverpool as well. Liverpool looking very, very good. I could see a draw today. I think it's going to be a great game.
It is. And just finally, Harry, before we let you go back to your grandson's football match, you had a great success in the St Leger with Continuous a couple of weeks ago, and that's running again in the Arc de Triomphe tomorrow. So, are you doubling up on Continuous in the Arc de Triomphe tomorrow? Or have you got another selection for our viewers?
No, I think I'll have a few quid each way on Continuous tomorrow.
You were there at the wedding, so you're going to be there at the funeral, is that?
I've got to be careful. I put a tip out yesterday. I had a running yesterday, and we were so sure it would win. I told everybody, and that was I was distraught. It ran a stinker.
Is that why you're hiding in a car? Quick getaway from any of those
I'm hiding in case my mates are looking for me.
Well, I'm on Ace Impact for the Arc tomorrow, Harry, so we've got a difference of opinion here, so there you go.
I'm taking your tip. I'm going to follow you tomorrow.
Right. Well, look, until next time, thank you very much indeed, and have a great game. Enjoy the games. Now, I've got a couple of views here, because we were talking about before, there was a story in the Mail, why kids grow up unruly if dad isn't home for dinner. Well, loads of people have emailed us in straight away. I'm going to go to Zoe here. I'm a single parent who's raised 2 boys, and the dad was not around, and my eldest is now off to university. So hearing that the dad was needed around the dinner table is ridiculous.
And to be honest, lots of people have said the same thing. Michelle says, what a load of rubbish. I brought 3 of my kids up on my own and not one of them is unruly. Marianne says, neither of my children had their father at the table or in the home from ages 2 and 4. Both of my sons now in their 40s are well-mannered, considerate and extremely hard-working people I'm very proud of.
And Simon says, what about service personnel kids, where they can't always be at home, but they've got great families, great kids who are doing well. So that was lovely to hear from everybody there. Now, a new poll by Ipsos shows the highest level of public concern over immigration for 6 years.
The research found inflation and the economy still top voters' priorities, but worries about the levels of immigration have grown significantly since this time in 2017.
With the small boats crisis still raging on, why are the public so dissatisfied with the current state of immigration in Britain?
Well, join us now is businessman and former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Ben, thanks for joining us. I don't suppose these figures will come as a great shock to you, and probably not as a great shock to many of our viewers either. Do you think the thing that's driving this, though, do you think it's concern about the levels of legal immigration, or do you think these figures are mainly driven by the small boats coming over the channel, the illegal immigration?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question, because people tend to focus on the illegal immigration. But, you know, we've had unbridled legal immigration. And as Suella Braverman so brilliantly set out in her speech last week, or this week it was, earlier this week, you know, it's not just the impact and the risks of illegal migration, it's the impact of legal migration economically as well as on the social fabric of the United Kingdom that is, I think, distressing people. And it's not racist to say that what we need is a homogeneous cultural settlement for the UK. What we don't want is 1,000 years of a history that's resulted in this fantastic country that we have being ripped apart because we've got immigration that's out of control, multiculturalism operating not as a homogeneous collective, but in silos, and often abutting against each other with, you know, schisms in society. We don't want that. What we need, as she rightly indicated in her speech, is immigration to be materially slowed down, both for the economic organism that is the UK, but also for the social fabric of our country, both of which are under great strain as a result of this immigration.
The poll, though, is not just one-way traffic, as some people might think. You know, in this poll, people want more immigration of nurses, more doctors coming from abroad. They want more immigration of care workers, more fruit pickers coming from abroad, more lorry drivers and more construction workers. So, actually, the people who are not happy about immigration are not all in favour of clamping down on it. Some of them are not happy with the government's policy because they think it's too severe and the rhetoric is too hostile. That's feeding some of this concern about immigration, isn't it?
Well, if we look just at the economic impact of, you know, what's going on, it's a falsity to say that we need immigration in order to solve our labour market problems. We've got 6.2 million people at the moment. It's a record number receiving universal credit to some extent or another. 2.5 million of those 6.2 are not even seeking employment. They've given up on the job market because it simply doesn't pay to work in the UK. Our taxes are so high. I know you discussed taxes earlier with Michael and Mike, and taxes absolutely have to come down. We won't get the United Kingdom working unless it pays to work. It's kind of self-evident. And to import unskilled or lower skilled labour, fruit pickers and so on, is basically operating a third world economic model for a first world country.
It's a dangerous cycle to get into that, isn't it? Your own people not
really
working and bringing people in to do those jobs. But finally, if the government got the Rwanda policy working, do you think this then would alter those polls? Do you think that would allay people's fears?
Well, I sadly, I don't think it will. Even if Rwanda works at full tilt, as it were, the maximum number of people, I believe, that can go to Rwanda in the order of about 4,000. You know, that's a drop in the ocean compared to the number of people coming, literally. Forgive me, a drop in the ocean compared to people coming across the Channel illegally.
Ben Habib, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Now, coming up next, inheritance tax. Should it stay or should it go? We've both got sides of that debate who will be battling it out next.
Plus, there seems to have been a growing number of prison officers having affairs with inmates. We'll be speaking to a forensic psychologist to try and understand why.
And as ever, keep your views coming in. Send them to gbviews@gbnews.com. We'll be back with you in just a moment. But here's the weather.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. +2 showers for some of us today, mostly towards the northwest. Sunny spells elsewhere, and actually it is largely fine in the south as a ridge of high pressure builds in. But we've still got low pressure to the north of Scotland. Tightly packed isobars here, so strong winds through the day. And quite a number of showers, especially for the Northern Isles, Caithness, Sutherland, parts of Aberdeenshire. Fewer showers further south. 1 or 2 for Northern Ireland, Northern England, but across the southern half of the UK, mostly it's dry with sunny spells and feeling warm with lighter winds in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius. Not feeling quite so warm with 14 or 15 in the north of Scotland. Into the evening, the showers continue for a time in the far north, but eventually they'll ease away. Likewise, the winds will begin to peter away, and so clear skies, lighter winds, well, that will lead to a cooler night compared with recent nights, with temperatures fairly widely in the single figures, and in some sheltered parts of Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, low single figures. Touch of grass frost possible as we begin the weekend. But actually, Saturday gets off to a beautiful start. Plenty of sunshine across the country early on, and we keep that sunshine in the far south and southeast through the day, likewise for the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, cloud builds, and for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, outbreaks of rain move in. The rain heavy in Northern Ireland, where it will be windy as well.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Esther and Phil. Whether you're watching it on TV or whether you're listening to us on the radio in your car as you go out and about on a Saturday morning. Now, we've got some views coming in. We were talking about public concern about immigration has doubled over the last year. That was a poll that had come in. And Adam said, I'm not surprised by this poll. Immigration is the most concerning thing facing our country at the minute. I think the next election will be decided by how the political parties handle it.
Yeah, Pam says migration is top of my concerns list. If Labour get in at the next election, God forbid. I should say, though, Pam, in the latest polls I saw, when people asked who do you trust more to sort out the problem of immigration, I think Labour scored ahead of the Conservatives. So maybe many people don't agree with that.
We did actually do a poll this morning on Twitter/X, and it says, which issues are most important for you for the government to sort out? We had NHS, we had immigration, and we had the economy and inflation. And actually topping that was immigration, 76%, NHS, 12%, and the economy and inflation was 12% too. So, we're now going to move on to inheritance tax. Yes, debates over inheritance tax have dominated the political agenda this week, with the Prime Minister suggesting he may abolish the tax as a general election looms.
Inheritance tax is widely unpopular, with many viewing it as a death tax, but many believe lots of people wrongly think they will have to pay it, and that there should be other priorities for reducing tax.
So is inheritance tax a fair policy to ensure a reasonable distribution of wealth, or is it just a callous measure to rob the dead and their children of hard-earned money that has already been taxed?
Well, joining us to debate this is Communications Officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim, and finance expert Jasmine Birtles. Thank you both for joining us. Jasmine, if I could start with you. As Esther just said there, inheritance tax is money that's already been taxed. So why is it fair for the state to have a second bite of the cherry and tax it again?
Oh, I know what you mean. And frankly, when it comes to tax, there is no such thing as a fair tax. All taxes are unfair to somebody. Absolutely, all taxes are. So the only thing that you can do, really, is try and work out a tax that works, something that works better than other taxes do. So the reason why I'm not fussed particularly about inheritance tax is, firstly, it affects less than 4%, of estates. So it's a very small number of estates that are even affected by it. And secondly, because it doesn't really harm the economy. In other words, my concern about VAT, for example, and particularly income tax, is that these taxes stop people working. They harm the economy. I would rather bring those taxes down, one or both, ideally, than bother about something as, frankly, small. as inheritance tax.
Jasmine, you say it's 4% or just under, and that's right, but over the next decade it will be growing to about 12%. But the YouGov poll said more than half the country thinks that we should abolish now this inheritance tax. 40% of Labour voters think it should, and more 18 to 24-year-olds believe in favour of scrapping it than not getting rid of it. Did that surprise you, those results, the numbers of people wanting now to get rid of inheritance tax?
It did. I mean, I'd quite like to see the questions that Ipsos asked, because, as you know, you can skew the answers depending on the questions. You know, you could say, do you think it's fair that people who've paid tax all their lives then have to pay tax again when they die?
A fair question.
You know, that would be the answer. That would be my answer, absolutely. And of course, I don't think inheritance tax is fair, but we have to have taxes. So if we're going to cut anything, I would like us to cut taxes that actually affect the economy.
Reem, that's a very good point, isn't it, that Jasmine makes there. I mean, at the IEA, we could probably get you on about any tax and you'd say that it's too high and it should be scrapped and or whatever the rest of it is. But obviously that's not feasible. So, you know, in a cost of living crisis, when people are struggling to pay their bills and whatever, if the government is going to introduce a tax cut, surely there should be a better priority than inheritance tax, shouldn't there?
Yeah, I mean, Jasmine's actually right here. You know, consumption taxes like VAT, income taxes are probably more likely to have a positive effect on the economy if we were to cut them. But ultimately, if the conversation is about inheritance tax and whether or not we should be scrapping it, we've got to think about the morality of it, you know, in its entirety. We know that the super wealthy don't really pay the tax in the first place because they're able to effectively avoid it through different sort of complex schemes. If you can afford to pay the lawyers, then you're able to avoid it. And ultimately, it's about what inheritance tax represents. It's crushing families. It's effectively telling families that they're going to be disencouraged through the tax system from trying to build up wealth for their families. And I think that's wrong morally. We also think about the sort of realities of the situation. It's incredibly economically inefficient to be taxing families effectively in double tax. And it is a death tax. It's effectively when you die, all of your wealth then has to be taxed for that moment. And I think, you know, at a time when a loved one is passing away or a loved one is dying and your family are having to think about the tax bill, I think that's incredibly immoral.
But Reem, I mean, I suppose that Jasmine's point, which I think is a fair one, is that, you know, all taxes are unfair to the people who have to pay them to a certain extent, and this raises about £7 billion a year for the Exchequer, money that it needs, and it's still not balancing the book. So, what fairer way is there to raise taxes than inheritance tax? What would be a fairer way for the government to tax people than this?
Well, I think that's particularly interesting. I would actually argue for a flat rate of tax. I'm surprised I'm in a debate where most people are agreeing that the tax system is unfair. We don't normally get that. But yeah, I mean, absolutely right. The tax system is incredibly unfair. But the problem is that it's currently the burden, we've got the highest tax burden since the Second World War. And that burden is being pushed onto hard-working families.
I think... Reem, you're cutting out a little bit there. So if I move over to Jasmine, and I'm just thinking, really, when I was looking at it, 40% was the rate for inheritance tax. And then I looked at other countries with inheritance tax, and it was much more nimble and thoughtful. It sort of staggered it through. It was lower. So is there a point there to reduce it, to not have it so high? And I think why you've got a combination now of people against inheritance tax, it is because the taxation that they're already paying is significantly higher. Family and business tax is now £100 billion more than it was at the last general election.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are a few things here. I think, firstly, it would be worth putting up the threshold at which people start to pay tax. Currently, as you know, it's 325,000. Now, if you put it up to, say, 500,000, that would mean that quite a lot of people who currently are just getting into the threshold would not have to get into that. So I think that would be reasonable to put it up to a certain amount. And as you say, taxes are ridiculously high now. And I personally feel that if we brought down income tax And certainly if we brought down VAT, we would help the economy. People would work more, we would have more productivity. And paradoxically, I think we would have a higher tax take, actually. This is the weird thing.
Jasmine,
we've seen in the past that when...
Jasmine, thank you for joining us, and Reem there too. And as you say, a consensus has broken out, hasn't it? Get the tax rates down.
I'm not sure there is a consensus in the country, is there? I mean,
to get tax down.
Well, people want to spend money on public services and things. You can't have this sort of fairy tale where you can spend more and more money on things.
Oh, you think it was just in our interview?
Yeah, no, I think lots of people say, well, hold on, I want more money spent on the NHS, I want more money spent on schools, I want more police officers and whatever. So lots of people say, and actually, you have to pay for that, and you have to pay for that through, and somebody's got to pay for it, and so why?
Yeah. So what they're saying is we want lower taxes, but we're not cutting any of our spendings anyway. And you've got to do that. You've got to say, well, you therefore have to cut spending somewhere for taxes to come down.
I guess, you know, the other thing people might say with inheritance tax, if the government does that would be Rishi Sunak looking after himself and looking after his rich friends.
Well, anyway, our viewers will be quick to tell us what they think.
Exactly.
Now, look, there seems to be a growing number of prison officers having inappropriate relationships with inmates. 18 female officers were dismissed at one jail alone.
The incidents have raised questions about vetting processes and the quality of training provided to new prison officers.
So who is to blame? What is to blame? Is it poor vetting, inadequate training, or power imbalances? Joining us now is forensic psychologist Dr. Naomi Murphy. Naomi, so, you know, when you first look at this story and you're seeing how many, particularly female prison officers who are going with inmates, your first thought might be, oh, is this the attraction of a bad boy, or is it something much more sinister here? Is it about coercion? Is it about blackmail? Is it about their naivety and they haven't been trained right? Where would you start looking at this problem?
I think that's a really good question, Esther, and I think actually it's very easy to just locate the responsibility within the individual who's committed the wrongdoing, but actually you have to think about the role of the organisation in this. So officers only have a 6-week training process, which in other countries might be as long as 2 years, and what training does is give people more confidence. Prisons are environments where people don't feel safe, and so actually people are exposed to really strong emotions like fear, hatred, disgust. And during those kind of situations where people feel strong negative emotions, people tend to bond together in adversity. You see similar things with NHS staff, for instance, having relationships with one another at a very high rate because of the fact that people are bonding in traumatic circumstances. So I think, you know, lack of training and experience does play a role. I think the fact that women are a minority is also a contributory factor. So the culture is, you know, it is quite a misogynistic culture. It's harder for women to fit in and belong. And actually, if you're not feeling safe, you don't feel like you belong in your staff group, then people tend to look for other people to connect with.
I mean, I take your point there, Naomi, but it does seem extraordinary, the number of, in particular, female officers and male inmates. I can't work out whether there's something sort of in that in particular, or whether or not the papers just report those because for some reason they're more interesting to the public, and actually there's lots of male officers having affairs with female officers that just don't get reported. I mean, what would your hunch be about that? Is there a particular reason why a female officer would be more attracted to a male prisoner, or do you think that this is probably happening across the board? We only hear about those ones.
Well, I think women probably are more vulnerable, as I say, because of being in a minority. And, you know, there is a culture where women are also exposed to sexualisation from their male colleagues at times. And, you know, you've seen on the news this week, actually, what happens with it when a minority sexualise women, that actually it can be a bit of a destructive force. But the other issue that's there in prisons is it's quite a homophobic culture. So people don't see... you don't see openly gay officers very often, male gay officers very often, and actually there's much more suspiciousness about female staff. So a female prison officer going into a male prisoner's cell will arouse suspicion in a way that a male officer doing that wouldn't. So people just wouldn't even entertain the idea that there are homosexual relationships happening between male staff and male prisoners.
There was something that I read here, though, which I thought was quite alarming. The number of female prison guards have increased by 27% in the last 5 years, in line with diversity requirements, as if the diversity requirement has been of greater concern than maybe these relationships and better training.
Personally, I don't think that's likely to be an issue, because what you generally find is that staff groups where there's a lot of female staff tend to have lower levels of violence, actually, in prisons. And some of the best officers that I've worked with have been female officers who've been really good at calming and de-escalating a situation. So I agree that these figures are alarming, but I actually think they say something about the organisation's inability to help staff feel safe and protected. I think another factor is that when staff don't feel valued, they look for validation and appreciation. And the prison service culture is not one that values staff. Staff often talk about feeling underappreciated, under suspicion, don't feel as if their employer has their back at all times.
And then somebody said here, another point was, the women have got a captive audience here. There's no competition and they're enjoying the attention. Do you think that's right?
I think that may be a factor for some women, but I doubt that. I doubt that explains it all in its entirety. I think it is quite a complex picture.
Yeah. Naomi Murphy, thank you very much indeed for joining us on that very complicated issue. It brought up lots of points that we hadn't necessarily thought of.
Very interesting. So let us know what you think about that. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, coming up in the next hour, we've got more of the top stories of the week. As I said, it's been a feisty one, hasn't it, between Michael Crick and Mike Parry? And also we're having a debate around road safety.
Especially after that terrible accident yesterday on the motorway, which our thoughts go out to all the families involved. Anyway, we've also got that and the latest royal showbiz and sports roundup with your show favourites Michael Cole, Hayley Palmer and Aidan McGee.
We'll be right back with you.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. +2 showers for some of us today, mostly towards the northwest. Sunny spells elsewhere, and actually it is largely fine in the south as a ridge of high pressure builds in. But we've still got low pressure to the north of Scotland. Tightly packed isobars here, so strong winds through the day. And quite a number of showers, especially for the Northern Isles, Caithness, Sutherland, parts of Aberdeenshire. Fewer showers further south. 1 or 2 for Northern Ireland, Northern England, but across the southern half of the UK, mostly it's dry with sunny spells and feeling warm with lighter winds in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius. Not feeling quite so warm with 14 or 15 in the north of Scotland. Into the evening, the showers continue for a time in the far north, but eventually they'll ease away. Likewise, the winds will begin to peter away, and so clear skies, lighter winds, well, that will lead to a cooler night compared with recent nights, with temperatures fairly widely in the single figures, and in some sheltered parts of Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, low single figures. Touch of grass frost possible as we begin the weekend. But actually, Saturday gets off to a beautiful start. Plenty of sunshine across the country early on, and we keep that sunshine in the far south and southeast through the day, likewise for the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, cloud builds, and for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, outbreaks of rain move in. The rain heavy in Northern Ireland, where it will be windy as well.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Live with Phil and Es. We've had a right lively show today and it's going to continue that way. Now, after that awful crash yesterday, that school coach crash, we're looking into road traffic accidents. Why are there so many more in the last year? We'll be speaking to a road safety expert to explain that.
Yeah, and a survey by the National Union of Students has shown that 69% of students are having to work while they're studying in order to make ends meet. Is that a good thing, or is it a distraction away from their studies that we should be trying to stop? We're going to speak to a student who's actually got 3 jobs in order to make ends meet as a student, to get her perspective on that.
I have to say, I worked when I was a
Me
student.
too.
What's new?
Didn't do 3 jobs, to be fair.
Yeah, get out of bed, get working as well. And we've got a royal roundup. The wonderful Michael Cole will be telling us what's happening. And if you ever wondered why the Queen used to disappear and now the King will be disappearing over the party conference season, why do they disappear to Balmoral at that time? Michael Cole will tell us.
And we have got broadcasting legends Michael Crick and Mike Parry with us to go through the big stories of the week, where you're guaranteed some very strong opinions and some very lively debate. More of that will be coming up very soon. I want to get your views on all of these big stories of the day, so please join in. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But before we get stuck into all of that, here's the headlines with Tamsin.
Phil, thank you, and good morning from the GB newsroom. It's 1 minute past 11. Dozens of Conservative MPs have signed a pledge to never again vote for an increase in overall taxes. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss and former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith are among those to have signed up, along with 7 former cabinet ministers. The promise means they won't vote for the Chancellor's autumn statement if it contains tax rises, putting pressure on Rishi Sunak ahead of the Conservative Party conference. Jeremy Hunt has told The Times he wants to stop the vicious circle of ever-rising taxes, but ruled out tax cuts in the short term. Former party chairman Sir Jake Berry, who has organised the pledge, says it holds the Chancellor to his word.
All too often,
we have seen these promises and pledges made by MPs across the political divide that haven't materialised. That is why this tax pledge is different. It isn't connected to the Conservative Party. It is a direct pledge from me and my constituents in Rosendale and Darwen and to the British people that I will not vote to put taxes up. It's for keeps. It is a pledge that I will stick to as long as I am a Member of Parliament.
The Prime Minister says he's slamming the brakes on the war on motorists. Rishi Sunak, who's expected to address the issue this week, told The Sun that harebrained schemes like low-traffic neighbourhoods and 20 miles per hour zones were being forced on drivers. The Department for Transport says guidance will be reviewed to prevent their blanket use in England. Local councils in England also face a clampdown on using traffic offences to boost their budgets. The driver of a school bus who died after it crashed on the M53 yesterday has been named online by his family. Stephen Shrimpton's family say the father of two suffered medical issues at the wheel of the coach. 15-year-old Jessica Baker also died in the crash. 4 other children were taken to hospital, including a 14-year-old boy whose injuries are said to be life-changing. The pupils were on their way to Calday Grange and West Kirby grammar schools on the Wirral when their bus overturned after colliding with a car. Rail passengers are again facing travel chaos, with train drivers going on strike today. ASLEF members at 16 operators in England have walked out in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Many parts of the country will have no services, and those that do run will start later and finish earlier than usual. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says the current offer on the table is reasonable.
It's clearly a political strike, timed to coincide with the Conservative Party conference. You don't have to think very carefully to see that's the case. But look, there's a fair offer on the table. Train drivers get paid an average salary of £60,000 for a full-day, 35-hour week. The pay rise that's on the table that they won't put to their members would take that average salary to £65,000 a year. Now, look, I think most of your viewers will look at that and think that is actually quite fair and reasonable.
Well, ASLEF's General Secretary Mick Whelan accused the Transport Secretary of not negotiating.
Well, it's not political, it's industrial. Mr Harper and his cronies for the last 16 months have been accusing us of attacking all sorts of events on strike days, which we haven't done. Because we haven't seen Mr Harper, we decided to make a point today. Where's Wally? Where's Mark? Come and see us. We are striking today to get the attention of the Tory party and the government to resolve this dispute.
2 people have been injured after a crash involving the Flying Scotsman. The train was involved in a slow-speed collision with another heritage train just hours before visitors were due to board it at Aviemore Station. The National Railway Museum says a shunting incident happened whilst the steam train was being coupled with the Royal Scotsman train carriages. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's over to Esther and Phil.
Thanks, Tamsin. Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil.
It's time now for a look at the biggest stories of the week with broadcaster and journalist Michael Crick and TV and radio presenter Mike Parry. Michael, HS2.
Yeah.
The thing is, the book called
Yeah.
You're Mike.
OK, I'm Mike.
He's
Michael.
We're starting with Michael.
I'm Mike and he's the Crick.
Michael, HS2.
With too many mics around here. What we expected in a television studio,
It seems that you're shoulder to shoulder with Boris Johnson.
Well, actually, yeah, Boris Johnson has been saying quite a few things recently that I agree with, which I never thought would happen.
Is that just because he's being contrary to Rishi?
Of course. But I think there are things he genuinely believes in. But and he's got this wonderful column in the Daily Mail today. Again, I never thought I'd say that.
You think it's a wonderful column?
It's about HS2. And he points out that in China, there's an academic course at one of the universities about the horrors of democracy. And they teach the HS2 as an example of how democracy doesn't work in the West. And he points out that in China, in the time where we've been building HS2, and not a single passenger has gone through it yet, and not a single mile of track's been laid, the Chinese have built 25,000 miles of high-speed railway lines, and he points it out, it's utterly bonkers to cut it off in Birmingham. I mean,
Can I just say,
this is my point. It's like building a bridge halfway across a river and then abandoning it and expecting to use it.
To be comparing it with communist China, where they take nobody's views into account.
Yeah.
The country is much, much bigger. Vast swathes of nobody in the country. It's a very poor...
I mean, do you...
well, it's his comparison, not mine. But
Do you think that HS2 should be built irrespective of what cost it reaches?
No, of course not. Well, I think, you know, I think governments should... I mean, some of the costs you can't avoid. There's inflation when it comes to materials, for example. I think that there's been far too many costs incurred by tunnelling the first stage through Buckinghamshire and so on, which wasn't originally planned, but there were so many objections, they ended up doing tunnels. They never build motorways through tunnels, by the way. But it's madness to just build it to Birmingham. I mean, who is going to go, say, from Manchester to London, get off a train in Birmingham, go over to the HS2 station, catch the HS2 train down to London, get off at Old Oak Common, which is just outside the centre of London, and then they'll have to get a bus.
In Birmingham, by the way, you'd have to change stations as well in Birmingham, because you wouldn't. It doesn't run from New Street; it runs from another
But overall,
station.
it's a good idea because the capacity on the West Coast main line, as Esther knows, is at breaking point, and you need another line to the north.
Capacity has altered since lockdown and COVID.
A bit, yeah.
I'm persuaded, Mike, by this sort of mastermind.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's what I call the mastermind argument. I've started, so I'll finish.
No, not at all.
Pretty good rule in life.
Mr. Crick is obfuscating.
Come on, let's have
Mr. Crick is obfuscating about the whole project, saying, oh, the Chinese could do it faster and all that. As Esther pointed out, if you haven't got any opposition, you can build it tomorrow. Now, the big problem is it's a very badly thought-out project from the start. I've got a fact here. The first phase of HS2 may end up costing £396 million per mile, whilst in France they built a line between Paris and Strasbourg at 31 million a mile. So it's 10 times more expensive to build things in this country because we're not very good at doing it. It should never have been started. It should be scrapped immediately. And the areas now which have been levelled and you know, huge swathes of the countryside have been laid to waste should be turned over to property developers to build the houses that we need in this country to try and increase our housing stock.
Why do this country down? And I'm
not doing the country down, I'm doing the project down. I'm doing David Cameron down for putting so much energy behind it.
And the French have managed to build thousands and thousands of miles of high-speed line.
And the Germans.
And why can't we in Britain? Now, you're basically saying we're not up to it. That's what you seem to be saying. And what you've left all this uncertainty now between Birmingham and Manchester, all these people who don't know whether their houses are going to be bought
they have
up,
been
or whether
bought. They've been bought and wasted.
Right, well, it is a waste then.
Can I just ask you about this? Because when HS2 was first envisaged, it wasn't to benefit the north. It was to get it quicker for people in the north to get to Heathrow. That's what there was without a short haul flight. This project was never. It's become this sort of great token of, but it was never designed.
Well, I think there is an element of that, and I accept that. But and frankly, if it means that sort of people commute from Manchester to London, that it's a bit arguable how helpful that is to the north. However, northern mayors have decided they want it, and they're much more on top of these things than I am. But it's useless in leaving it just to Birmingham.
Let me just ask you about this. It's supposed to be to benefit Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, these big cities.
None of which will have it.
Well, it's supposed to. Lord Barclay says it's going to cost 180 billion. Whether that's right or not, I don't know. We'll just say he's right.
Yes.
Right? That's 45 billion each for Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, and Leeds. Are you really saying that if you offer 45 billion pounds to each of those cities, they're going to say, actually, do you know what, we're all right up here, we don't need it, we're going to pool our resources and build a train line to London? Is that really the best way you can spend money to benefit the north?
Well, they seem to think it is. And,
do you think so?
I don't know.
I don't
know what the alternatives would cost. What I will say is that I think if I'd been doing this 15 years ago, my priority would have been a high-speed line between Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, benefit you.
Totally agree.
Hull,
Now, we all
and up to
agree with that.
Newcastle.
So I think-
Why wait till HS2's finished before you can...
Well, it looks like to compensate this crazy decision, the government is going to announce that HS2 TransPennine
So on
next
that,
week.
we can all agree that should always have been the train line.
Start from the north and work down.
All of the...
and this line that I agree with Mike on that. Yeah, start from the north and work down.
Is out of date, conceived 2004 by...
Gone. It's not going to be ready till 2046.
So out of date, and now people are online, and now when you think of the cost of it, the cost of the train ticket, in fact, people now jump on Zoom to be there quicker, to do the meeting, to pay less than they are jumping on a
Esther,
train.
by 2046, right, when that would be the eventual time the, mystery station at Euston might be ready, if it's ever ready at all, which it won't be, by that time, wheels might be so outdated, we'll be running our trains on magnets. So what's the point of going ahead with this?
Put the magnets on the same line.
Says that the north, it's always the north that has to sort of accept something being cancelled.
I totally agree. I think it's an absolute disgrace. I come from Chester, OK, and when I was back there last time, do you know what? It really upset me to know the number 9 bus I used to get to school, which used to run twice an hour, now runs once every 90 minutes. The north is badly served.
Which is why I say those northern mayors banging on about HS2 but are doing nothing about the infrastructure on the ground. In fact, I say time to get rid of these regional mayors. What do? Cost the fortune.
Hopeless.
Have a whole bureaucracy team.
That's a debate.
OK, but do we need mayors? The job was done before they were there, and you just didn't have the cost.
I totally agree. Andy Burnham says, I'm scrapping ULIS now.
I think the mayors, including Andy Street of Birmingham, of the West Midlands, who's a Conservative mayor, I think they do a very good job in pointing out where the government is stupid in so many things and lobbying for the Midlands and the North in a way that the Labour Party without mayors is not very effective.
Professional moaners.
So it's just political.
No, they're professional campaigners for the North.
So basically, it's just a political ding-dong.
And, of course,
many millions.
your government was going to level up, wasn't it? Where does all this leave levelling up?
Before we kick off.
Yeah. Go on, right, OK, let's talk about the headline here. Happy to split the bill, how your politeness eats into your finances.
By the way, Mike, can I tell you, this might not have this might ruffle as many feathers as splitting the bill. Well, should be paying for
it might be. Anyway, look, it says it's the moment of the evening when the bill arrives. The awkward question arises between you and your fellow diners. How do you split this? Do you know how I get over this? I always pay. And do you know what? I don't wait.
When are you taking us out?
yes. I'm serious, and I don't wait for the bill to come to the table. About when I think we've got about 10 or 15 minutes to go, I excuse myself for a bathroom break. I go to the till and I pay the bill in total. Because years ago, I gave up trying to avoid being embarrassed when you're splitting up a bill. And says, but I only had 1 glass of wine, and you had 2 bottles, Mike. You know, so yeah. So I don't even wait for the argument anymore. You know, well, I had a very expensive dish and you had a couple of brandies. I couldn't care less.
Have you got a lot of tight friends, Mike?
Do you know what?
Tight in what sense?
No, I just don't give them the chance. I find it highly embarrassing talking about money. I find it highly contentious. You can actually start falling out with people over dividing up a bill. So it's easier just to say, I've had a reasonably good life. I'm OK, thanks a lot. I'm not hanging around. Sometimes I get up and say I'm going for a bathroom break, pay the bill and then disappear. Well, I don't want to see them.
You always pay the full bill, Michael, whenever you go?
Very occasionally. I'm not as well off as Mike, because I have
I'm not
had
well
a
off.
less successful journalistic career. And he is very... And I admire his generosity. And poor chap is going to be bombarded with text messages now, isn't he? If he knows what they are. But no, I don't. I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because there's also, you're sort of thinking, well, shall I have that expensive dish? And you think, well, if there's 4 of us, then it'll be split 4 ways anyway. So it sort of encourages the bill to go up if you split it.
And the cost of wine.
Of socialism here.
You may have a point there. If someone else is, if you're dividing it amongst you may have a point.
But equally, don't you think you have different rules with different friends? Because I've got some friends who are very much into splitting it up. I've got other friends who go, oh, this time it's your turn, next time it's ours. And then I've got others. My dad's a bit like you. Sort out the bill. To be fair, Bill is very good.
Just going and
sort the bill. but he actually sorts out and pick up the bill.
The other problem is this: is whether there's if there are some people around the table are well off, got good, well-paid jobs, and other people are unemployed or whatever, and you see them ordering a green salad or something, and you think, gosh. And that comes into it, doesn't it? There are certain situations where splitting it straight 4 ways is a real strain.
Of course it is. And I'll tell you the other thing where you fall down as well.
Yeah.
Whenever you come to this arrangement, well, you pay for the food, I'll pay for the drink. I did that once, right, at Langton's Brasserie, and the food was about £60, and the booze was over 300. Each bottle of wine was £100.
Well, you should have seen that one coming. But anyway, we're looking forward to this lunch. Shall we have it now?
It's very nice.
I wanted to point out this story in the Mail today, page 4. Economy bounces back stronger than France or Germany.
Fantastic.
And obviously, you two are doing OK, so obviously going out, picking up bills or this, that, and the other. But only reason I want to point, not only just to say we're doing better than France or Germany, but actually, as a country, we do need to talk ourselves up.
We talk ourselves down all the time, Esther. You're absolutely right.
I listen to the news, wherever it is, and I listen to a multitude of channels, watch a multitude of stations. I am bored of us running ourselves down. So thank God for this.
How do the Remainers answer this issue?
Well, I don't know about Remainers as a whole, but, I mean, these figures are, to be welcomed. But I would add a note of caution.
You've got your caveat, you
I have. Well, I'm thinking you might agree with this caveat. The figure of, by the middle of this year, GDP 1.8% larger than it was before COVID, so in other words, over 3 years. But if you think that the population has gone up, I mean, the population last year went up by about 1%, 600,000 more, actually. And if you do it in GDP per head, which is what we all feel as human beings, that actually we're just about standing still.
Yeah, but
so
Michael,
it isn't as good.
Many more people are not economically viable in the country in the sense of, I think it's nearly 5 million people now are not economically operative in this country, whether they're on benefits or welfare or they've just chosen not to work. These are astonishing figures when you think that today, for instance, to get here, I've had to deal with a railway strike, OK? That railway strike has closed down businesses everywhere I've gone. That railway strike means that the taxi drivers at the stations are not picking up passengers. So when you think of the knock that the economy's taken over the course of the train strikes alone, NHS strikes, this is a remarkable figure.
Well, I think the NHS strikes as a proportion of days lost. It's tiny compared with, say, the 70s.
We could keep up this debate, I think, all day.
But end on a high, the economy bounces back stronger than France or Germany. That's a UK economy.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Indeed.
Anyway, coming up, a record number of students are having to work part-time to pay their way through their studies. Is this good preparation for life?
Yes.
Or is it the sign of a broken system?
Plus, is it time for more stringent road safety measures? And your essential showbiz and sport and royal roundups.
So stay with us, we're back right with you. But first, here is the all-important weather.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. +2 showers for some of us today, mostly towards the northwest. Sunny spells elsewhere, and actually it is largely fine in the south as a ridge of high pressure builds in. But we've still got low pressure to the north of Scotland. Tightly packed isobars here, so strong winds through the day. And quite a number of showers, especially for the Northern Isles, Caithness, Sutherland, parts of Aberdeenshire. Fewer showers further south. 1 or 2 for Northern Ireland, Northern England, but across the southern half of the UK, mostly it's dry with sunny spells and feeling warm with lighter winds in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius. Not feeling quite so warm with 14 or 15 in the north of Scotland. Into the evening, the showers continue for a time in the far north, but eventually they'll ease away. Likewise, the winds will begin to peter away, and so clear skies, lighter winds, well, that will lead to a cooler night compared with recent nights, with temperatures fairly widely in the single figures, and in some sheltered parts of Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, low single figures. Touch of grass frost possible as we begin the weekend. But actually, Saturday gets off to a beautiful start. Plenty of sunshine across the country. early on. And we keep that sunshine in the far south and southeast through the day, likewise for the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, cloud builds, and for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, outbreaks of rain move in. The rain heavy in Northern Ireland, where it will be windy as well.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:25. Lots of views coming in about all sorts of things.
Oh,
Esther,
I'll do a couple here on inheritance tax. Michael, it should be scrapped. It's a regressive tax. Richard, inheritance tax is a grave robber's tax on ordinary hard-working people. Scrap this raid now. Susan, I would suggest a more onerous tax that should be scrapped is actually stamp duty, not inheritance tax. And Alison, it is morally wrong to tax the dead. There was loads of you coming in on that, and overwhelmingly it was to get rid of it.
Lots on HS2 as well. We had a debate with Michael Crick and Mike Parry about that, and the debate's continuing with your views coming in. Ray says scrap HS2, but Phil says build it all the way to Manchester. The cost is spread over 20 to 30 years, so that's $5 billion a year. So, of course, we can afford it. And we were talking about what you should do with the bill. Should you split the bill? Mike Parry pays everybody's bill himself.
If you go out for dinner.
Yeah, so get yourself a date with Mike Parry. But Vivian says, my friends and I eat out regularly and have different incomes and drinking habits, so we get a pen out and work out our individual bills. We're not embarrassed by this. It just makes sense to us.
And use your calculator on your phone if need be.
And maybe just students do the same. And new data has been released by the National Union of Students showing that 69% of students are working part-time on top of their studies, with 34% saying it has a negative impact on those studies.
The study revealed that tiredness, juggling commitments and less time for studying have all been negative repercussions of having to work through university.
So why is it becoming so necessary for students to work their way through their studies? And is it really a problem? Is it not a good thing?
Well, our next guest is a student at the University of Hertfordshire, living at home with parents and working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And that's Clarissa Struthers. So welcome to the show. Right, so Phil had a job, I had a job. Anything wrong with having a job while you're at university?
There's nothing wrong with having a job at university, but interestingly, when I first started university, the first thing they said to us was, this is your full-time job and this is your priority. That was fine. Students know we might have to work a little bit, but I think, especially because of the cost of living, we're having to work more than just a little bit. Priority is having to work to make up for the lack of loans.
Now, I did law. Mm-hmm. And when you say it's a full-time course, I can honestly tell you, with going into university, it was 12 hours a week. It's not full-time. What are you doing? What's your course?
I'm doing social work.
And how many hours is that a week? Lectures?
It's 2 full-on days, which they've squashed it to full-on days because of the cost of living and letting people come in the cost of travelling to university.
So I think that's a fair point. So there's 3, if you say just a 5-day week, there's 3 days there spare. Like I said, I did 12 hours. How many hours did you do as a full-time?
Oh, 9. I think only 3 of those hours were compulsory.
And I think that is why it could be a good thing. So what is it you feel you're missing out on?
Well, simply, for me, I was working 1 job when I first started. For year 1, 1 job, and that was fine. Year 2, wasn't enough money for me. I had to gain a 2nd job. I'm now in year 3 and I'm working 3 jobs just to suffer the...
Good job, it's not a 10-year course, isn't it?
Exactly, it goes up and up and up. It does, but obviously inflation everything's increased. Food, rent, mortgages, petrol,
and what's the jobs you're doing?
I'm working in a residential children's home. I'm working in a school and I'm working as a nanny.
Do you not think that those jobs will help you get a job after you finish university
100%.
and that it'll be actually to your advantage? You'll look back and think, I'm glad I did those jobs.
100%. And that is why I do those type of jobs, because it contributes to my studies. But I'm putting a lot of time in the jobs, whereas I could be studying. And what that impact has on my grades, it impacts people's grades. A lot of students are not coming into uni because they're prioritising work.
This is what I thought was interesting. When I was working and then going to university, I actually, probably a bit like work hard, play hard, I then focused a lot more. Your friends who aren't doing a job, what are they doing in that time? Are they doing constructive stuff?
69% have got a job, but that means that 31% haven't got a job.
Yeah.
So what are they doing? How are they coping? If you need 3 jobs, how are they coping without any jobs?
Well, I just want to know, is it making them work harder? Are they absolutely slamming you on the exams or what?
Well, they've got more time to put into their studies, which...
But are they?
...means better... I can't talk for them, I'm not too sure. Hopefully they are. But for my course, we have 2 placement years. So in year 2 and year 3, that's 5-6 months we're doing our placement. That's a 5-day-a-week placement. That impact... And on top of that, we have exams, we have coursework, and this year we're doing our dissertation on top of that placement. 5 days a week. How can I work? I have to work during...
And you've also got holidays. You've got holidays you can work.
So I work through the holidays to make up for it. Yeah. Then I don't get a break.
Isn't the issue here, though, Clarissa, that too many people are going to university and the state just hasn't got enough money to fund them all, and therefore at some point we're going to have to make a choice. Do we have fewer people going to university fully funded, or do we have more and more people going to university and they're having to pick up the slack?
Do you need to go to university for the job that you want to do?
I have to go to university. Yeah. It's a registered profession.
But could it be in a apprenticeship so that you're earning and learning, sort of what you're doing anyway, only you'd be focused more on your job. So an apprenticeship, I would think, if I was going to university now, I'd be doing an apprenticeship.
Well, one, there's not really enough apprenticeships out there. Two, I know someone that's doing an apprenticeship and working on top of that. So I think we say we need to upskill people, we want people to work. People need to go to university, and sadly, it's disproportionately affecting people from lower income families because I and lots of other students are being supported by parents as well as having to work hard.
I think I'm glad you're having doing a job. I said we did a job. I think students aren't doing full-time, so they could easily do a job. But I do think apprenticeships, rather than the degrees, are the way forward. I don't believe everybody needs to go to university, but I'm impressed with your work ethic, and you're going to do well whatever you do.
Exactly.
Absolutely, you are.
Yeah, we're impressed, and lots of employers will be impressed. So I think it might seem hard now, but I think it'll work out for the best in the end. But Clarissa, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us.
Coming up, we've got a roundup of the big royal stories of the week with renowned royal commentator Michael Cole, plus your sports and showbiz headlines with Aidan McGee and Hayley Palmer.
Well, first, here's the headlines with Tamsin.
Phil, thank you. Here are the headlines at 11:32. Dozens of Conservative MPs have signed a pledge to never again vote for an increase in overall taxes. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss and former party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith are among those to have signed up, along with 7 former cabinet ministers. The promise means they won't vote for the Chancellor's autumn statement if it contains tax rises, putting pressure on Rishi Sunak ahead of the Conservative Party conference. The Prime Minister says he's slamming the brakes on the war on motorists. Rishi Sunak, who's expected to address the issue this week, told The Sun that harebrained schemes like low traffic neighbourhoods and 20 miles per hour zones were being forced on drivers. The Department for Transport says guidance will be reviewed to prevent their blanket use in England. The driver of a school bus who died after it crashed on the M53 near Hutton yesterday has been named by his family as Stephen Shrimpton. Online, they said the father of 2 suffered medical issues at the wheel of the coach. 15-year-old Jessica Baker also died in the crash. 4 other children were taken to hospital, including a 14-year-old boy whose injuries are said to be life-changing. Rail passengers are again facing travel chaos, with train drivers striking across the country. ASLEF members at 16 operators in England have walked out in a long-running dispute over pay, jobs and conditions. Many areas will have no services, and those that do run will start later and finish earlier than usual. Well, those are the headlines, and you can get more on all of those stories. Just visit our website, gbnews.com.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with me and him. Now, yesterday we got the tragic news that a school bus was involved in a fatal crash on the M53, resulting in the sad deaths of the driver and 15-year-old Jessica Baker.
The recent events, plus a shocking image from last year surfacing of a man in Liverpool driving while sipping a mug of tea with both hands off the wheel. Is it time for more stringent road safety measures to be implemented?
Well, joining us now is retired policeman and spokesman for the Support and Care After Road Death and Injury campaign, John Scrooby. Now, John, looking at these figures and the number of deaths on the road, they've increased from 1,558 in 2021 to 1,711 last year. Most of it seems to be caused by distraction whilst driving and speeding. So what do you think is happening? Why this increase in the last year?
It's difficult to say why in just this 1 year. Perhaps the lockdown may have had something to do with it, with people being off the road. Any death on the road is a tragic incident, and it's made all the more traumatic for the families who are left behind. But it's a sudden, unexpected and usually traumatic death.
I mean, John, the president of the AA, Edmund King, says that about a fifth of people who die in cars on the road is due to them not wearing a seatbelt, which I was quite surprised about, to be perfectly honest. Does that tally with your experience? Is that still a big problem, people not wearing a seatbelt?
Yeah, well, we refer in road safety circles to the fatal four: not wearing a seatbelt, driving under the influence of drink or drugs, speeding and distraction. They're the 4 main causes of collisions. Interestingly, younger drivers seem to be involved in more collisions than the rest of the general public. The 70 to 24-year-old drivers make up approximately 11% of the driving population, and yet they're involved in over 75% of serious and fatal crashes. That's something that needs to be addressed.
Now, John, I saw in an article in the Telegraph, Rebecca Guy from the road safety manager at the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents. She was quoted as saying that much of this was due to a lack of government strategy and funding. And what I didn't understand was what extra government funding, how does that help with people speeding or being distracted while they're driving?
Education is a key to it, and to get to the younger drivers, the novice drivers, I was involved in a presentation called Drive for Life for many, many years in South Yorkshire. We spoke to over 7,000 students every year, trying to explain to them what the Fatal Four are, but more importantly, how to avoid being involved or being distracted. You know, the importance of wearing a seatbelt and not speeding. And I think if we can get to the drivers at a younger age, we're going to bring on a new generation of safer drivers.
And is the distraction? Is it
can't be done without funding?
Is it mainly mobile phones? Is that the, when you say distraction? Is it mobile phones? Is that the biggest distraction that causes these accidents?
Without a doubt, it's the use of mobile phones and other devices. We hear of people, you know, very often we hear about people texting when driving or being on the phone when they're driving. We hear stories about lorry drivers watching TV while they're driving on a laptop. As I say, it's all a matter of educating people about just how dangerous this is.
John Scrooby, Road Safety Officer, former policeman, thank you very much indeed for your time and sharing your expertise with us today. It's time now for a roundup of your biggest royal stories of the week.
And with us to tell us all that's happening in the world of royalty is former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. So, Michael, what I was intrigued about is during the party conference season, the Queen always went to Balmoral. It looks like maybe Charles is. Can you explain what that's about?
Good morning, Esther. Good morning, Phil. And Esther, of course, you've got it, because for years and years, decades, there's been a sort of tacit agreement between Buckingham Palace and the political parties, but the monarch does nothing major during the political conference season because we can't have the king or the queen, as the late queen, stealing the headlines, dominating the news, just as the party leader or, heaven forbid, the prime minister rises to deliver their keynote conference speech. So it's very convenient that the monarch stays at Balmoral, enjoying themselves. And that, of course, is what the king and the queen, Camilla, are doing. They're not actually staying at the castle. They live at Burke Hall, which is a rather handsome house, once occupied by the late Queen Mother. The king doesn't actually like the castle very much. And if ever you look at the castle and you think it looks like Aberdeen City Hall, well, you'd be right, because they had the same architect in the 19th century. So he's up there and the world spins. Prince William and Princess of Wales, Catherine, they've been doing minor jobs, but nothing that's going to drag the attention away. And of course, the king will be basking, quite rightly, in the glory of that state visit to France, which couldn't have gone better. Last weekend, they just were back from that. And it was terrific. And here you've got some wonderful pictures of the Guard Republican mounting a guard of honour for the King and Queen, and she looked great that day. I think this was at the Arc de Triomphe, laying the wreaths there. And it was great, you know, because it was celebrating the Entente Cordiale, which was signed in 1904 and made France and us allies ever since, 119 years since. And before the Entente Cordiale, we'd been at daggers drawn with the French. We'd almost gone to war with them over the Fashoda incident. But the king's great-great-grandfather, King Edward VII, the one with the stomach and the beard and the cigars and the potatoes, he sealed the deal when he met a famous French actress, and he kissed her hand and he said, "Madame, you are as beautiful as France itself." And then, of course, he was a huge hit. And we've been friends with the French on and off. We've had a few bad moments, but by and large, it's been a great success.
On and off might be the operative phrase there, Michael. But I just wondered, this thing about the convention with the party conference, I was quite impressed that the king was wanting to continue with that. Obviously, part of that convention, as you said, is about not getting involved in political issues. I just wondered, as net zero may well become a much bigger political issue between now and the general election, is the king going to be able to hold back and help himself and not get involved in that political debate?
Well, you're absolutely right, Phil, because he's been on the throne now a year and he hasn't made any bad errors. He hasn't entered into over political discussions, and he doesn't have to, because we have the Royal Convention, which means the king has to be informed, can encourage and can warn. He's got a privilege that none of us has. He has his Tuesday night meetings, his audience, or the Prime Minister has an audience of him, to use the correct terminology. And of course, he can make his views known.
But he didn't do that, he didn't do that, did he? Just as Rishi had said, he's going to do the net zero timetable in a more practical way. The King came out and gave his speech in France about the importance of the environment. A bit of a, I thought, an unnecessary clash. Maybe not.
Well, maybe they were out of step, or maybe Buckingham Palace having that speech would have been okayed by the government. You can bet your life it had been gone over every comma and every full stop before the Prime Minister made his initiative, because as you well know, the party now is reacting to public opinion and it's tailoring its policies in the hope of finding approval at the next general election, which is just over a year's time. Maybe that would be the limit of it. So I think the people who were out of step there was Downing Street, not Buckingham Palace, because that speech had already been agreed. Of course.
Michael Crick.
Michael Cole.
Cole Crick. Where Michael? We've had so many Michaels on today. Mike Parry, Michael Crick, Michael Cole. But thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Now we're delighted to have with us in the studio sports broadcaster Aidan McGee and showbiz journalist Hayley Palmer. Welcome, team.
Good to see you.
Thank you, team.
Aidan, we'll start with you. Ryder Cup, what's happening in the golf? The Europeans are running away with it, aren't they?
They are indeed. I mean, so they made a great start yesterday. They were 4-0 up early. They finished last night 6.5 points against 1.5 points. We've not seen form like this from a European team in many years. Remember 2 years ago at Whistling Straits, they were wiped out in front of no crowd whatsoever. I'll tell you something, my brother's there watching it at the moment. He said the difference here is that the crowd are raucous. They're right on top of the players, and that benefits the home players at all. And they've carried on that magnificent form this morning. They're now 9.5 against 2.5 for the USA. Implosion within the US camp as well. All sorts of stories coming out of there this morning about players not getting on with each other, disagreements and fractures within the camp. And this whole McIlroy and Fleetwood thing. What do you reckon McIlroy and Fleetwood are called?
I've no idea.
Fleetwood Mac.
Oh.
And of course, no, they are, seriously. And at the moment, they're everywhere.
Honestly. I never know whether it's a joke or not with it. Hayley, what's happening in the world of showbiz?
Well,
put some sanity back to this.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Showbiz? We've really slipped on showbiz.
Well,
sanity.
no, this is good news because Dancing on Ice is coming back and they're teasing the new contestants who it's going to be. So, news in Claire Sweeney, who's just gone into Corrie. She's going to be taking part. Hannah from S Club. She's not going on the tour, but she's going to be on the ice. What about that? Also, Ricky Hatton, MBE, who's the boxer. Amber Davies, who's from Love Island, who's now a West End star. And Greg Rutherford as well, who's an Olympian. And I do think the sports people have got that advantage. They've got that mindset, haven't they?
It's not just that. Ricky Hatton, as a boxer, would have to work very strongly and very swiftly on his footwork. Because as he manoeuvres around the ring, it's so important now. It's probably, especially in his generation.
So, OK, I'm going to ask that. Do you think a boxer would be better on the ice or a ballet dancer? Because there's a lot of grace and balance.
Yes.
You've got to have the grace. Definitely a ballet dancer. But I think with any athlete, they have that mindset of they just work really hard. They know they've got...
determined.
Yeah. So they always do well on Strictly and Dancing on Ice. But if I was on there, I want to do... Is it the headbanger? You know when they
swing you
round? You'd love it, Phil.
Really?
Yeah.
Different for a boxer. They're obviously operating on and moving around on canvas as opposed.
So Hayley likes headbanging.
We did not get Harry Redknapp on the Dancing at Ice. We were talking to him earlier about his first game as manager. He lost 9-0, and he reckons it's because his team were fall sliding about on the ice and couldn't perform. That was his excuse. Anyway.
OK.
So, anyway, we're on about boxing. I was reading about some huge numbers for a fight between Fury and Usyk in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, so this is what they've been waiting for. Earlier in the year, around about March, they pulled away from negotiations. That fight, if it had happened, would have been worth about £100 million, taking place at Wembley. they're waiting for the Saudi season in Riyadh, 26,000 crowd. Not as big as you get at Wembley, but the numbers just tell, Phil, to be honest with you, 150 million this purse is going to be worth. We're not actually sure of the split, and we think it's going to take place on December the 23rd. However, Tyson Fury on October the 28th has a fight against an MMA fighter, which he has to come through. It's believed to be a formality. I think it will happen, but the latest this fight can happen with Usyk is against March. This will be, Phil, the biggest heavyweight fight of the 21st century. If Fury wins, it cements it. Yeah, exactly.
The biggest fight, though, might be taking place in Big Brother, might it? That's
I am buzzing for this, Phil, because I know people say, oh, no, Big Brother, but I just love people watching. So for me, I think it's very educational to see how people bond or fight. It's going to be brilliant. Now, I hope they've got some good contestants. They haven't revealed anyone yet. I hope they're not influencers and just boring people.
Is it a celebrity one? Or
No, it's not celebrity, but I hope they get good people in there, like characters in there. Like, we want to see drama. We don't want to see everyone getting on.
Episode 1, they had some, somebody who had been a nun, and then somebody who was like a brickie, and somebody,
normal people.
Yeah, but
with it ended up being a freak show, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it does.
No, but somebody who's got, I guess, it's conversation points. Somebody who can bring you an opposite point of view, and that's what you're looking for, not like a bunch of influencers who are just sort of posing and taking photos.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. We want characters in there, so I won't be going in, don't worry, even though I would bring some characters to that house. But will Bess and AJ Odudu are the presenters this year? It used to be Emma or Ryland. They're not doing it this year, so I'm a bit disappointed.
I thought it was Davina McCall.
Yeah, it used to be Davina. Yeah, it was Davina in the day as well. See, you do like it really, Phil.
Do you remember the early contestants? It was like Alex Sibley, Kate Lawler.
Oh, they were the good old days.
What's his name?
Yeah.
No, he was not Nick Bateman. Do you remember him?
Oh yeah,
but they were quite normal people by comparison to what you get today. Was that a fair comment?
I mean,
Craig,
it worked,
the Scousey,
didn't it?
Bricky,
It
wasn't
worked, yeah. We knew nothing like it. So, anyway, Sunday, 9 o'clock, you can check that out. They've also got a spin-off show as well that's called Late and Live. You can watch that. Phil's looking at me like...
Morning.
Phil, you're going to love it.
Phil, I'm afraid we'll be watching either the football or the horse racing or the boxing. It certainly won't be Big Brother.
Sport. I'll be watching the sport.
He'll be watching sport.
Exactly. Liverpool and Tottenham.
Exactly, yeah.
Harry Redknapp predicted a draw, I think.
Well, I think, funnily enough, that was Harry Redknapp's first game in charge when he took over at Tottenham in 2008, and it was a statement victory because his side didn't really look back after that. But yeah, today, different set of circumstances all these years later. 5:30 kick-off.
They're both flying, aren't they?
Yeah, they are doing very well. And Tottenham are looking very attractive and very easy on the eye under Ange Postecoglou. And last week they showed a little bit of resilience as well. They trailed twice against Arsenal, pulled it back at a ground where they don't get too many results.
Did you see that Hayley was snuggling in there next to Aiden, just moving along?
I tried to do it really gracefully.
In a very circus way.
Did it well.
As we got Martin in, because Martin's got a cracking show and it's coming up next. Do you want to tell us your highlights?
Yeah, so it's a debate special today. Knife crime after another tragic stabbing in Croydon. How do we tackle this? And we need to talk about ethnicity. Suella. Who can blame her for turning away the Archbishop of Wokery, Justine Welby? All he'd do is have a pop.
I was with Justin for most of yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
I was at a Eucharist. A friend was being made a bishop, so I was with him for 2 hours yesterday.
You like him, but Suella has blanked
I never said that.
Yeah.
I never said that.
And then, of course, North Sea oil. It's time to start drilling. We cannot continue importing 20 billion quid's worth of gas when the future is beneath our feet. We've got that and much more. It's going to be juicy.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, it'll be lively as ever. Thank you very much indeed.
Our show was super lively today, wasn't it? Honest to goodness. And there was a little poll we had here, if I can get it up on my phone.
It was about inheritance tax. Should we abolish it? Should we keep it? 54% said abolish it. 46% said
I agree.
keep
Get
it.
sure.
So it's very tight. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much to Aidan and Hayley and to all of our guests and for you for watching. And stay tuned to Martin Daubney.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. +2 showers for some of us today, mostly towards the northwest. Sunny spells elsewhere, and actually it is largely fine in the south as a ridge of high pressure builds in. But we've still got low pressure to the north of Scotland. Tightly packed isobars here, so strong winds through the day. And quite a number of showers, especially for the Northern Isles, Caithness, Sutherland, parts of Aberdeenshire. Fewer showers further south. 1 or 2 for Northern Ireland, Northern England, but across the southern half of the UK, mostly it's dry with sunny spells and feeling warm with lighter winds in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius. Not feeling quite so warm with 14 or 15 in the north of Scotland. Into the evening, the showers continue for a time in the far north, but eventually they'll ease away. Likewise, the winds will begin to peter away, and so clear skies, lighter winds, well, that will lead to a cooler night compared with recent nights, with temperatures fairly widely in the single figures, and in some sheltered parts of northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland, low single figures. Touch of grass frost possible as we begin the weekend. But actually, Saturday gets off to a beautiful start. Plenty of sunshine across the country early on, and we keep that sunshine in the far south and southeast through the day, likewise for the north of Scotland. Elsewhere, cloud builds, and for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, northwest England and North Wales, outbreaks of rain move in. The rain heavy in Northern Ireland, where it will be windy as well.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep.